Hi, and welcome to Board Basics. My name is Sherry Lawson. I am the Director of Special Projects at Community Development Professionals.
And I'm David Dawson, Senior Project Specialist with Community Development Professionals.
The Board Basics training is brought to you by Community Development Professionals, whose mission is partnering with organizations to grow and nurture viable communities. We do that through working with the four major stakeholders in the community: educational institutions, nonprofits, businesses, and government. Because we believe, along with the residents of the community, these four key stakeholders make up a viable community. With the nonprofit angle, we have our CDP Bridgeworks program, which is a program of community development professionals designed to build the capacity of faith-based and community-based nonprofits.
The Bridgeworks program has two areas in which we work. First of all is the training that you're attending right now. We also have several other trainings available if you'd like to visit our website at www.communitydevelopmentprofessionals.com. The second portion is technical assistance, where we can offer one-on-one support to your organization in many different areas such as strategic planning,
review of website development. Basically, the way the technical assistance works is that if there's something that you do and we review it and help you and come alongside you, that's technical assistance and it's no cost. If it is something that you're wanting us to do all the work for, then there is a charge for that. For instance, we do offer as a service completing 501c3 paperwork. And we can do that for you for a fee where you don't have to do anything. Or you can do the paperwork and we can be there with you, answer questions, and kind of help you through that process. That's technical assistance. So that's just an example of that. We will be asking you at this time to complete a pretest. We are able to bring you these trainings at no cost because we're in partnership with other organizations and we need to show some results in that. And we always do that through pre and post test. So we will ask you to stop now and complete the pretest. Okay, welcome back. We're going to start off by just talking a little bit about our philosophy of organizational development. Basically, there are 6 key components to nonprofit organizational development. Those components are legalities, board governance, image development, resource development, strategic planning, and program development. You'll notice on the screen that these come together in a circle format. It's a good visual image to say that if any one area of these is less developed than others, you feel that just as you would a puncture in a tire as you're rolling down the road. So it's important for each one of these 6 key areas to be in balance. Today, we're going to be talking obviously about board governance.
Well, let's get some background information about our boards. A corporation, whether for-profit or not nonprofit, is required to have a governing board of directors. All nonprofit corporations are responsible to the public, like for-profits are responsible to their shareholders. The board of directors is a representative of the public. Members of the governing board have certain legally required fiduciary duties, including duties of care, loyalty, and obedience.
And if you don't know what that is at this time, we will be talking a lot about that later on throughout the training.
Boards can be operated under a variety of models. Boards tend to evolve over time.
Some additional facts: most organizations do not educate their board members. Most board members are unaware of their legal and ethical responsibilities. So what is a board? Basically, a board is a group of people charged with the responsibility to govern a corporation. And we'll say again, all nonprofits are required to have a board of directors. It's also important to note that the legal authority of the board is vested in all of the board members, not in any individual board member. Oftentimes, nonprofits start with the passion of an individual person. Sometimes we refer to that person as the founder of the organization. And in many cases, there is a tendency to think that the founder of the organization has more authority than other board members. That's not the case. The board of directors governs a corporation as a body. Your bylaws will outline how votes are made. Typical language is a 3/4 majority vote. And so, in which, again, no one person has more authority than anyone else. Take a moment now and just think about why it was that you joined your board.
All right, at this time, we'd like to look at the top 8 roles and responsibilities of a board. Role number 1, responsible for duties of care, loyalty, and obedience. Care of duty. Board members should understand the nonprofit mission, regularly attend and participate in meetings, and be prepared to make informed decisions. Let's talk about the how when we refer to duty of care. Attend and participate in board meetings and be on subcommittees. Engage in activities of the organization like fundraisers and marketing events.
I have to tell you, Dave, that is the one that really stands out to me as being involved in fundraisers. I can't tell you how often I have attended a fundraiser, and because we work with your nonprofit boards, I know the board members, and it is really frustrating to go to a fundraiser and not have a board member present. Basically, what you're doing is asking me to give me your money, and you're not even bothering to show up. It's really important for board members to be present at fundraisers.
Yeah, if they don't show their support and how they care for the organization, exactly why should I? At this time, let's take a look at an activity. Duty of care calls for each board member to know the mission statement of the organization. Without discussing with others, please write down the mission statement of your organization.
Next, we're going to talk about duty of loyalty. Basically, what we're saying here is that board members must put the interests of the nonprofit above their own when they're acting as board members. One of the things we talk about a lot at CDP is what hat we're wearing, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about duty of loyalty. It is important for you to know what hat you're wearing when you come into the boardroom. Many people are recruited as board members because of their community connections, their business connections, their background, and their experience. What duty of loyalty requires is that when we come to make decisions for this organization, that we're putting the best interest of this organization ahead of our own choices. For instance, if we have on our board member hat and we're in the boardroom, but we're also a, let's say, business owner in the community who owns a concrete company, and what we're discussing is redoing the driveway of the organization. It is not in the best interest of the organization for me as a board member and a contractor for me as a board member to be paid to do that work. And so duty of loyalty would require me to step back, maybe not take that job for my company, and to put forward what is best for the organization. So that's what we're talking about here when we talk about duty of loyalty. We're promoting the best interest of the organization at all times.
Now, with that example, Sherry, if I can add, it's very interesting. People will say, well, I have a board member who has volunteered that or donated that. Anything that someone wants to do at no cost is not a problem. The key in this situation is when funds are going to be exchanged from the organization to the board member, we want to make sure that those areas do not come about because it can only allow people to question the integrity of the board.
Often what I hear in trainings is someone will say, but you can recluse yourself from the vote. And the reality is you can. There are certain ways that you can go about doing that cover the conflict of interest situation. But really what the word from the government these days is avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest situation. And so that's why it really is better just to choose that duty of loyalty and do what's best for the organization, and don't be hiring your board members to do jobs. So, and that's what we're talking about here at the bottom of the slide too, avoiding conflict of interest situations.
Now let's talk about duty of obedience. Board members should be faithful to the nonprofit's purpose, follow the organization's governing documents, such as bylaws and policies and procedures, and strictly follow local, state, and federal nonprofit laws. In doing this, we should report name or address changes to the Ohio Secretary of State and Attorney General.
It's amazing to me how many organizations we work with who do not know who their statutory agent is. When you become a nonprofit, you assign a statutory agent. Basically, your statutory agent is the person who's receiving all communication from the Secretary of State. There are a lot of times that nonprofits appoint that, don't know who that was, and there are communications going out to somebody's house that nobody knows about. So it's really important that you know your statutory agent. If you don't, you can go to the Secretary of State's website and it'll give you that information, but you want to make sure you keep that current.
Another responsibility we have to look at in this area are the withholding of taxes from employees' paychecks. We are responsible as a board to make sure that we're following any laws out there that govern our organization. We also need to ensure that the organization is properly insured. We're not just talking about liability insurance. There's directors or officers insurance. All these types of things need to be reviewed on a regular basis to make sure you're current and the most up-to-date coverage that you can possibly have to protect your organization.
And my guess is, as we get through the next sections about your legal responsibilities, many of you are going to really want directors and officers insurance. Okay, we're moving on to role number 2. And that is that the board establishes plans for the organization. Often, one of the questions that comes to us is, whose role is it? What is this, a staff role? Is this a board role? One of the best ways to look at it is the board's role to plan for the organization, and then it's the staff's role to implement those plans. Some of the plans you want to have in place as a board, you need a strategic plan, a 5 to 10 year outlook on where your organization is going. An image development plan. An image development plan is deciding how you are going to market your organization in the community. What is your image going to be in the community? A resource development plan is looking at where your money is going to come from. And a program development plan is what programs are you going to be offering, and you want to do that in a strategic way.
The third role that we're going to look at today is determine the organization's mission and purpose. What are we here to do? Are we doing it? Is what we are still doing relevant? Should our mission or purpose be updated? These are all questions that you as a board need to ask yourselves to make sure what you're doing is still relevant and vital to your community.
One of the examples I have of that is before I came to work at CDP, I was the executive director of a pregnancy center. And for years, the mission of that organization was helping women in unplanned pregnancies. And then somewhere along the way, people realized there was more than one person involved in that. And it became important to take women out of the mission statement and put in the all people that were involved in that. You want to be careful when you're looking at changing your mission statement. You don't want to get away from who you were originally called to be. However, there are times when it does make sense to make that change. Role number 4, it's also the board's role to select and manage the CEO or executive director. Basically, the board is hiring, firing, and holding the executive director accountable. It's important to understand here that it is the board who oversees the executive director and the executive director who oversees all of the other staff and volunteers. Often we have board members who want to come in and tell staff members, other than the executive director, give them duties. This really confuses the flow of communication. So it is important that, let's say I'm a treasurer and I have an issue with the way the bookkeeper is doing something. I'm not going to the bookkeeper themselves and telling them that, because it leaves the executive director out of that loop. And we want communication to be strong in our organization. So the treasurer should go to the executive director, who then would make corrections to the bookkeeper in the supervisory type role.
Okay, let's look at role number 5. Ensures adequate resources. What are the resources needed to implement the strategic plan? And how are we going to get those resources? I think this is a key area to look at when we talk about the board is responsible for the resources and funding of the organization, but they are also responsible for the programs and the direction of the organization. We find it necessary for the board to be involved in both aspects.
What I'd add too, as a former executive director, I know that this is the number one reason for executive director burnout. It takes approximately 2 years for the average director to be fully trained. And it's probably not a surprise to know that the average executive director lasts about 2 years. And I think one of the number one reasons for this is this area of feeling the weight of having to make sure that the funding is there to meet the program needs. And so this to me is one of my hot button issues, again, as a former executive director, of having felt that weight. The board is supposed to be there, and they're supposed to make plans for the organization and then ensure that the funds are available to accomplish the plans they've made.
At this time, we'd like you to do a short activity. Please write down how you feel the board is involved in fundraising.
Rule number 6, determine and monitor the organization's programs and services. It is important for the board to be involved in monitoring the programs and asking the relevant questions. Are the programs and services we offer effective? Often we will offer a program for years and years beyond its effectiveness because we'll have the "we've always done it that way" mentality. It is important that not only are you asking the question of are our programs and services working, but also how do we know that? You should never start a program in your organization without some way of evaluating the success of that program. So you also want to ask the question, are we meeting our strategic goals and objectives? Take a moment now and think about or write down how the programs and services that are being offered in your organization and how they meet a community need.
Okay, role number 7. Enhances the organization's public image. Board members represent the organization in the community. They are the face of your organization out there. That's why it's so important to be active. That's why it's so important to be a part of the board so you know what is going on. An uninformed board member is one of the worst things your organization can have out there. When somebody stops them and asks them a question about the organization, you want that person to be informed. You want that person to understand. Even if it's bad things that are going on, they need to know what's happening inside your organization so they give a true representation of your organization. Are board members reputable? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves and make sure that we are looking for reputable people to be on our board, to give the best image, and to give us the best possible scenario to be successful.
If we were in the classroom at this time, we would talk about how we would handle a board member involved in a public scandal. I think it's important for you to think about that. Often what we do is because we work so closely together and we're in the trenches together, we have a tendency to want to brush over that and say, we love each other and we're going to support each other in scandal. But if we go back to duty of loyalty, it's important that our board members represent us well. So if you have a board member who might be involved in a public scandal or who has a reputation that is not great in your community, you really want to think about that because your donors see your board members as the face of your organization. Role number 8, the board is responsible for assessing its own performance. You need to be doing regular evaluations of your executive director. I would say please don't ever have your executive director have to come to you and ask for an evaluation. You need to be responsible for doing that. But along the same lines, we also need to be doing regular annual evaluations as a board. How are we doing in accomplishing each of these 8 roles and responsibilities?
When we talk about self-evaluation right now, do not be afraid of the negative. You have to look at any weaknesses that you have so you can go on and develop them. One company that I look at right now that I feel has just done an excellent job is Domino's Pizza. They came out not too long ago and said, wow, you told us our pizza is so bad it doesn't even matter how cheap we make it, you're not going to buy it anymore. So what did we do is we went back, we reformulated everything, and we feel we've made a better product. Now we want to put that out to you. They didn't run away from the negative. They admitted to the problems that they had. They addressed those problems. They fixed those things and made their organization better. Now, if you go and look at Domino's Pizza sales, it has skyrocketed in the last several months. So don't be afraid of the negatives. Don't be afraid of situations that you may need to address. You have to meet those head on, or they're only going to get worse.